Why are people falling over themselves to protect Jeffrey Epstein? Because he is something of a linchpin to this matrix. I want to be very clear here, guys. Everything that is happening right now is factually stupid. These people are idiots. They're a part of the club. We're not in it, but we better get wise to it pretty soon.
So recently, Candace Owens had a podcast about how the Trump administration is covering up the Epstein story, why the tale they're trying to sell us is totally bogus, and why the evidence they've provided, including that stupid video, doesn't even withstand an ounce of scrutiny. Let's get Candace's take on this, and please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
And this Epstein situation is just stunning, because we've got to get into these similarly hilarious explanations and excuses that we are currently receiving regarding the Epstein files, because there is a level of gaslighting that is taking place that ought to be studied. I mean, we are just, what? Yeah. So to tee up this first clip, what's happening here earlier today, Pam Bondi is very reasonably being asked by journalists about the discrepancies between her past statements and actions, which we'll get to, regarding Jeffrey Epstein and the files, and the extraordinary announcement that arrived yesterday that basically no other people are going to be involved. We're not going to, there's no names. The DOJ has concluded their investigation. Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile acting all on his own. There was no orbit. So let's just watch this clip, because I promise you it is indeed amazing.
Yeah, let's watch it. I'll just say, first of all, that her words have contradicted her previous words about the Epstein files, about the client list, about hours of video of, what she said was Epstein molesting kids. And we'll get this video here, but yeah, the administration can't even get on the same page amongst themselves and within what they've said on their own on this.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the stabbing?
Yeah, sure. If
Pam, could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Yeah.
This guy's been talked about for years.
Yeah.
You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
Yeah, we are.
That is unbelievable.
You should believe it.
Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I do.
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein
Believe it.
at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Yeah, her responses are perfect here. Yeah, we are talking about this. We're bringing this up. And guess who talked about this a lot in the campaign, Trump? It was you. Your promise to be transparent about the Epstein files and what we know about the case, what evidence the FBI has, who the clients were, because Ghislaine Maxwell rots away in prison for 20 years for being convicted of trafficking minors to no one, apparently. And why would Epstein kill himself if there was no evidence? This whole narrative doesn't make sense. And yeah, I know they want this story to go away because they've decided to cover it up. And these actions the last 2 days make it completely clear. And so do the responses here. So yeah, Candace is right. We're still going to talk about this. That's the only way we'll ever get answers, is if we continue to clamor for this. And it doesn't go away like, the JFK assassination did, and some of the other things that government has just completely swept under the rug in the interests of maintaining their own power and fiefdoms of power.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file, along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's
Quick fact check here. She answered a question directly concerning the client list and not the file in general. So you can make the explanation that, hey, I misinterpreted your question. I was actually talking about the totality of evidence in the case and not the client list, which, by the way, she nodded her head about and said it's on my table under the directive of the president. I'll be reviewing it. But she didn't come out with any kind of correction the next day or anything that said, hey, they had asked me about the client list. I didn't mean that. I meant the file. She didn't do that at all.
That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day.
And that never should be released or see the light of day. But again, this contradicts what you said earlier, which was that you had thousands of videos of Epstein molesting kids. That's what you said. And that is a little bit different than what you're describing now. So again, this is another inconsistency. This whole tale is full of inconsistencies.
To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide.
There was no definitive evidence of him committing suicide in whatever they released, and that minute of footage missing, that might be something of a red herring. But it is, pretty absurd that is within the video that they've had time to edit. They've decided this video is going to be massively disseminated among the public to try to convince them of their narrative here. And you're going to include a segment with that skip, and her explanation is that happens automatically every day or something going back to 1999. But again, if you're going to try to convince people of this is the worst possible way to do it. You didn't give us footage from within the cell. That would help people make their own judgments as to whether he committed suicide. This was a cell block, and there's lots of information out there that this doesn't look to be the same area or cell door that we were told was Epstein's cell door in the past. There's just so many open questions here, and they're not going to give us the real answers.
And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Yeah, there was no definitive evidence that he committed suicide, contrary to what she said. The only truthful thing that she said in that whole thing, as Dave Smith said yesterday, was that you're not getting any more on Jeffrey Epstein. That's it. That's all you're getting. That was the truthful thing in that.
I'm not laughing. You're laughing. There's so much happening here. There's so much to unpack. It's amazing how stupid they think we are. First and foremost, what even is that Trump filibuster? Are you guys still interested? Are you guys still interested in that? Wow, I'm shocked, because we are doing both amazing things in Texas. There are devastating and amazing. And what are we talking about with that is crazy. I mean, if you really want to talk about this guy, we can talk about this guy, but just so you know, we're doing some amazing and maybe some not so amazing things in Texas. Okay. Pam is taking notes like, okay, this gives me an opportunity to maybe come up with something on the spot. And what's incredible is that she refuses to assert whether or not Jeffrey Epstein was working for another intelligence agency, because we already know the answer to that. Yes, of course, he was working for Israel. Duh. That's why we're not allowed to know anything else about the Epstein files. But she's just like, that's unclear. We don't really know if he was doing that. We don't have the ability to determine that.
Yeah, of course, and they'll never say that. And, they've hinted at it before, actually, when she said that, hey, I'm looking at the Epstein files at one point, and she said, we got to consider redactions because of national security concerns. This is the track record of what Trump administration officials have said about this. But why would there be national security concerns about a sex trafficking ring if he didn't have relations with foreign governments that could be embarrassing to the United States? And you apply an Occam's razor, and yeah, it does look like he worked with Mossad, or at least that's the most plausible explanation. He had direct relations, a mentor to Epstein relationship with Robert Maxwell, a known Mossad agent. One of his best friends was Ehud Barak, former prime minister of Israel and also the chief of Mossad for a time. Visited Epstein almost more than anyone, I think 30 total trips. Sagar talked about that on Tucker the other day, and he actually lived with Epstein for a time. He also inherited vast amounts of wealth from Les Wexner, who also had very direct ties with the Israeli government, and Alexander Acosta, the DA that gave him that sweetheart deal in Florida. He said blatantly, openly, this is part of the record, I was told that he was intelligence and to kind of take it easy on him because he was above my pay grade. So yeah, it does look like that is a very big possibility.
And then this next part, which I want to be very clear here that I am not saying this word as a slur. I am saying this in its true denotative meaning. Pam Bondi's explanation for why a minute of the prison tape is missing is retarded. Okay. It is a cognitively delayed response that she offers us there when that question is asked. Hey, why is a minute of the prison tape missing? Slow it down. What she says back here is that a minute of the footage is missing because the prison always removes 1 minute of the footage every night, like since the 90s. Like it's daylight savings minute, and they just got to remove a minute. And so they're just waiting for more times. They haven't had enough time, by the way. That is, they just need a little more time so that they can get the evidence from the prison for why they had the daylight savings minute every night since the 1990s of the minutes that we would like to see maybe something happened.
Yeah, daylight savings minute. That's the right way to say it. It's so preposterous. I mean, even if you knew that was true, why would you provide that segment in the video that you're sharing among Americans that are skeptical about this entire narrative and have been for 5-6 years now? Almost 6 years. This is just so utterly absurd.
Huh? Please be my guest. Take a couple of seconds to digest that. Daylight savings minute. We just there's always that minute too in my house. We just delete 1 minute every night. We've been doing
daylight savings minute, man.
All of this is a little slow, my guys. It is just very delayed. Con retraso is what they say in Spanish. Okay, this is the explanations here are just absurd. And what is most compelling to me, by the way, about the Trump filibuster is that it requires us to be so gaslit that we completely forget that nobody made more of a show of the Jeffrey Epstein files and the release of those files than the person sitting to the right of him, Pam Bondi. That's why we're here. Pam Bondi was the one who notoriously handed out binders to a bunch of online influencers on February 27th. Okay, that was supposed to be apparently phase 1. And then too many of those influencers decided to pose in like cute pics with the binders. Okay. Like this, look at this influencer. Cute pic. Just me with the binder. See that? It says in red print, in case you can't see it, the Epstein files, phase 1. And ironically, when we took a look at some of those individuals, they were very new to the influencing scene and they weren't even influencing that girl with the cute pic, Emily Austin. Nobody really knows who Emily Austin is, other than the fact that she's a radical Zionist that is currently being shoved down our mouths. They're like, you will take her, and they're desperately trying to make this girl happen. And somehow, at the beginning of her influencing career, she gets invited to the White House and is handed an Epstein binder.
Yeah, and I think that all those influencers were strong supporters of Israel for the most part. You know, that was the prerequisite to being part of Trump's cabinet too, by the way. But she's right. We're in this situation because of Pam Bondi and how they sold this thing as if it was going to be a giant revelation that we were going to give to the American public, uniquely so in the annals of White House history, presidential history, in terms of transparency. The binder said phase 1. Implying that there's going to be a phase 2. And now all of a sudden, nope, there's no phase 2. And why are you talking about Epstein? And, you know, there's no answers here. I'm going to contradict all my previous statements. No, this is a cover-up, and Candace is right to question it and laugh at it and how absurd this entire narrative is. You know, I hope this causes an awakening of Americans to realize that we are being completely gaslit on a level that is really unprecedented. This is not just some petty crime. This is a global sex trafficking ring to the highest and most influential people in power in the world. Presidents were caught up in it. The most prominent lobbyists, lawyers were caught up in it. and we still don't have answers, and we never will. This really is a slap in the face to the victims, and to pretend that the clients don't exist. This revelation is more of a signal to the clients that, hey, we're not going to do anything to touch you. That's true if you ask me.
Okay. And then she makes, a very influencing video about having that binder. Let's take a listen to it.
I saw y'all on the internet coming for Kash Patel saying he's day 5 and we haven't gotten the Epstein files. Well, I'm here outside the West Wing and look at what we got today. The Epstein files, baby. Let's make America safe again.
And then when people pointed out the fact that this felt extraordinarily staged, and also noticing that nobody there had been critical of Israel, I don't know, kind of a big thing that we would want to see if we really feel like we're going to get to the heart of what's going on with Epstein, then people were accused of just being jealous that they weren't invited to Pam Bondi's binder party. Like Pam Bondi, she had a binder party and you just weren't invited. That's why you're jealous. Okay. And like I said, strangely, not a single individual there had been critical of Israel in any way.
Also, the information that they received was all previously released information, and Sagar pointed out on Tucker's show yesterday that some of the documents within that binder were actually redacted, some parts of them, whereas in later cases of those documents, some of those things were unredacted. So they gave us, those influencers, I shouldn't even say us, in this grand spectacle, they gave those influencers documents that weren't even current to what already existed. It was a total sham. This was a PR stunt that didn't work. It backfired immensely because why wouldn't it? No one's going to buy this, that you're giving back the same documents we all know and making a big show of it. And now you're coming forward with this to sweep it under the rug, say there was no evidence that Epstein engaged in blackmail, there was never a client list, and, just all this absurdity.
Like I said, there's so much here with the Epstein story, so much that is being hidden in plain sight. We barely scratched the surface yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein. We discussed his similarly forced biography. It reminded me of Emmanuel Macron. Same story. They told us that Emmanuel Macron was a savant. He was like Einstein. He was just amazing. He was like Bach. He was like Beethoven. And that's why he was then working for the Rothschilds. Then you kind of go back and you learn like none of that was true. Exact same thing here with Epstein. He was a mathematical savant. Okay, he never had any training and he was kind of pulled through the system. We have a lot of questions that we should be asking. And then something that I should also tell you is that despite having no academic successes, as we discussed yesterday, despite Epstein having no college degree, despite him being involved in multiple fraudulent scandals, Jeffrey Epstein was given an office at Harvard University. And I want to make it clear, this was after he was convicted of sexual crimes against minors. Harvard University said, that's okay. That's okay. You can still come here. You can still visit this campus. And not only that, we're going to give you your own office so we can fact check that. Here's a CB News article here discussing that. It reads, disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein visited Harvard University's campus more than 40 times after his 2008 sex crimes conviction and was given his own office and unfettered access to a research center that he helped establish, according to a review of his ties to the school. The review, completed at the request of Harvard's president, also found that the university accepted more than $9 million from Epstein during the decade leading up to his conviction, but barred him from making further donations after that point.
Yeah, this whole thing is so ridiculous, and nothing about this man's life makes sense. He was hired as a math teacher without any math expertise, math degree. He fraternized with a young female student. Surprise, surprise. The writing was on the wall there, it looked like. And then he was part of a hedge fund without any experience in trading or finance, hired as kind of a junior assistant to a trader, and then eventually he's made a partner just out of nowhere there. And then he's hired by billionaire Les Wexner, who owns Victoria's Secret and Abercrombie and other big brands like that. He owns the parent company. He just gives Epstein several hundreds of millions of dollars, ostensibly because he was good at handling his taxes. None of this makes sense. And none of it makes sense unless you think that Epstein worked for intelligence and there were connections there. So all this is insane. The Harvard thing after the fact is just insane too. And his punishment, by the way, in that sweetheart deal was essentially getting a wing of the sheriff's department carved out for him with his own custom television built for him, allowing him to go from residence to residence on work release programs and get fresh air. There really was no punishment, despite the fact that he had already committed atrocities and high crimes that, victims will never get justice for.
Amazing. Just absolutely incredible. He was given an office after he was found guilty of crimes against minors. Not an issue. Come right here. And do you want to know who else was working at Harvard at that time, who was working perhaps alongside him? Alan Dershowitz. You might know that name. Alan Dershowitz taught at Harvard from 1964 to 2013. He's a lawyer. That's a very long time to be at Harvard University, but he was one of the lawyers that was on Epstein's team that got him that reduced sentence for his crimes against minors in 2008, when he was just like the mayor of the prison and making the sheriffs put on uniforms and greet his guests as he was allowed out for 12 hours a day and making them hang his TV so that he could watch it. It is ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous. No one would be treated the way this guy was. And I think there's good, ample reason for that, is that he worked for intelligence. They were protecting him. And Acosta let the mask drop for a moment and said that. And, the mainstream media just pretends that didn't happen. They're not going to bring it up. They're not going to talk about it. But we know the truth and where the evidence leads us. Follow the money. Where did the money come from, Epstein? Seek the truth. That's what we need to do, and it's pretty clear that this is a total cover-up.
And it's funny because this morning I was speaking to Xavier Poussard of the Becoming Brigitte book and the person that inspired me to do the series, and we were sort of just touching upon how obvious it is. Once you begin the research and you fall down the rabbit hole, you just know what you're looking for. You start to recognize these patterns. And I can tell you that I know for a fact that they are handing out fake credentials. And I've known this before I even got into the Emmanuel Macron story. Like, just being in politics, I've met people who have degrees from Stanford, from Harvard, and I am going, you're dumb. You are actually really stupid. And your whole brand is fake. Like, it's almost like you're acting, like it's performative, and they just give you a degree so you can convince others that you're smart. I see this, and I'm never convinced by it. And that is one layer of this. It is a form of credentialism. And you're going, these people, that's happening intentionally. It's like an onion of the influence that they have, right? They have these fake people in Hollywood, and they want to turn them into A-list stars so that they're influential and you follow them and you do whatever they say because they're leaders and they're fabulous. They have their lawyers, Alan Dershowitz, obviously.
Who, by the way, was accused by Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre for a time. I think she may have withdrawn that in 2024 or something like that. But Dershowitz has received a lot of allegations against him in this case. And, that's something that, again, seems to be swept under the rug by the general narrative, too.
Because they need someone when their guy does something wrong, like Jeffrey Epstein, to be able to represent him, to fight for these people to have clemency and pardons. They have their politicians. Obviously, we know what AIPAC is doing, right? We understand that they have politicians that they want to pull through the system, like Barack Obama, and they are controlling those politicians once they're in office. They have their journalists, same thing, fake credentials, schools that they send them to. They have their banksters who are committing the white-collar crimes, right? When billions of dollars goes missing and nobody's held accountable. And then swoops in Alan Dershowitz, nothing to see over here, right? They have their doctors, they have their teachers teaching us the history that is being wiped before our eyes. And then, of course, there is a military and a police strand of this. And that book, Chaos, that I have been imploring everybody to read, shows you that. It's like they're all connected. There are just these sort of 7 layers.
It's the deep state and propaganda machine that props this up, and basically no presidential administration's been immune to it, especially since Kennedy, I would say. And, the deep state bureaucrats pull all the strings. They're the ones with the knowledge. They're not going to give that to us. Why would they give that to us? That would threaten their, empire of power. That's what we're dealing with here. This is the biggest government that has ever existed, the most powerful and the most propagandistic government that's ever existed in America. And, we're seeing the ramifications of that in the Epstein case, but that's just a small figment of the evils that they're capable of and covering up.
Where they control all of the information that we are getting. And yeah, I would say Dershowitz is pretty obviously one of these matrix lawyers. And I want to be clear when I'm referring to this American matrix that's been created, it's very clear Israel is behind it. If you need more proof that Alan Dershowitz might have an interest or some other allegiance, and I can say that here because it's not Harvard University, Trump's administration is making it illegal to say on Harvard University's campus. You want to be able to discuss Jeffrey Epstein on Harvard University's campus without being kicked out because they're running a whole cell there. But, they changed the definition of anti-Semitism. But while I can say that, yeah, it's pretty clear we've got some Israel firsters with a lot of power in our government. And it's not just the Epstein case that Dershowitz was involved in, him just like Epstein from Brooklyn. Despite him, Dershowitz being adamantly anti-Trump in 2016, he was somehow able to weasel his way back into the decision-making of who Trump was going to grant clemency to.
I think because he was involved in his impeachment case, right? He was one of Trump's lawyers, at least for a time. Trump was his client, at least for a time. But yeah, I'm with Candace here. There's lots of Israel firsters trying to twist, the tactics of woke liberals just in favor of protecting against anti-Semitism, which they don't even equate the same way that you or I would, that, it's hatred toward Jews. They mean criticism toward Israel. That's what they mean by the new term anti-Semitism that they're trying to rebrand to try to dispose of any criticism against Israel. And you're seeing that in how it relates to the Epstein case, but you're seeing it elsewhere. Certain states are rewriting their state hate laws to accommodate this, to conflate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. And it's absolutely absurd.
At the end of his first term. And you're not going to believe there's a common denominator in terms of who Alan Dershowitz tries to help get away with their crimes, like Epstein. Okay. Here's a headline in the New York Times discussing that. It says, using connections to Trump, Dershowitz became the force in clemency grants. And it tells us that he had an outsized influence over how Mr. Trump deployed one of the most profound unilateral powers of the presidency.
Yeah, and guess who else he's asked for clemency, for Trump to pardon? Ghislaine Maxwell. What do you know? What a stunning revelation. And in a way, it almost seems like a setup for that moment to happen by saying now that there's no evidence, there's no clients at all. Well, if there's no clients at all, how did this woman get convicted? What were the jurors talking about? What did they have to weigh in their minds and in their heads to make that conclusion that she belongs behind bars, albeit 20 years behind bars, which is not what these people deserve. These people deserve the book to be thrown at them and the people associated with them. But we'll never get those answers. And Dershowitz wants Maxwell pardoned. He's asked Trump about that.
Including commutations to 3 people on whose behalf Alan Dershowitz personally lobbied Mr. Trump after working on their cases with Jewish prisoners' rights groups. They included 2 New York real estate investors, Mark A. Shapiro and Irving Sitsky, who had been convicted of defrauding more than 250 investors out of $23 million. It also included a former executive at a kosher meat packing plant named Shalom Rubashkin, who was convicted in 2009 of bank fraud. I'm noticing a pattern here. Am I crazy to be noticing a pattern? Oh, and that's not it. Do you know who else Alan Dershowitz tried to and failed to get Donald Trump to grant clemency to?
Yep.
A preemptive pardon to? Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah, here's a headline in the London Times, the Sunday Times. Alan Dershowitz asked Donald Trump to grant Ghislaine Maxwell a preemptive pardon.
What do you know? The daughter of Robert Maxwell, a Mossad agent. No, he doesn't want her to get clemency. He doesn't want her to be pardoned. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. There's no Israel connection here whatsoever.
I don't know, guys. It just seems like Alan Dershowitz has a theme here. And what sort of banksters and gangsters and human traffickers he's trying to help out here is all I'm saying. But there's nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. I better not step foot on a Harvard University campus. They'll arrest me. Lock me up, Harvard. Lock me up. Also, I just want to point out, in case I know we mentioned it yesterday, and I said I'm actually going to look into it. It's crazy to look at the pictures that are being provided here as solid evidence that nobody went into Epstein's cell, because there aren't even the same doors. So way back when
Right.
Epstein committed suicide, they released a picture of his cell door. This is the picture that was given to the media. It was passed all around. I'm showing you a still from 60 Minutes. You can see up close, you're looking at a just, I guess, observe with your own eyes here. Spot what doesn't belong, spot what the differences are here. This is the door that we were showed way back when, and this is the door that's in the footage.
You can't make this up. They're not even trying to keep this narrative, this propaganda narrative, consistent. And it's so laughable. It's such an unfunny subject. But what is humorous is their attempt to sell this. Like, we do not buy this. I hope people don't buy this. I know some will. Some won't question the narrative. Of course, Ben Shapiro's out there saying, oh, yeah, you know, I buy the narrative. I have reason to trust it, and if you don't trust it, provide the evidence. Well, here's some evidence, Ben. They're not even the same cell door, or at least that's not consistent with what they previously said was the cell door in question here. So this tells us nothing. If this isn't evidence to the contrary of the tale that they're trying to spin for us, I don't know what is.
From yesterday. You know, that's just not the same door at all. And so now they're like, oh, well, that's a door you go through to get to another door. Okay, so we didn't see everything. We very clearly have not seen everything. And we also have a minute of the footage missing. All of this is problematic.
And not seeing within the cell because, you know, the cameras malfunctioned or the guards fell asleep or whatever tale they sold on that. And then Kash Patel went on Joe Rogan and said, no, we have footage. The footage exists and you're going to see it. I guess he means this farcical footage that no one's going to believe. I guess that's what he really meant.
Why are people falling over themselves to protect Jeffrey Epstein? Because he is something of a linchpin to this matrix, right? You really, once you start prodding this narrative, you start to understand globally what is happening. And the stakes are very high. Right? This exposes everything. It exposes the military industrial complex. It exposes human trafficking. It exposes the gangsters, the banksters, the frauds. It exposes an operation on college campuses, high school level, Dalton School. And I like to say the best way to think about it is like Harry Potter, like I said yesterday, we are the Muggles. These people are among us and they are being brought through the system so that they always have influence over our mind, so they can publish what they want to have published. They are the teachers, the professors, the lawyers, the experts that we're supposed to quote unquote just trust blindly.
And if you don't trust them blindly, and if you have the gall to question this and have skepticism toward it, be cynical toward it, you know, have questions, then you're a conspiracy theorist, right? Despite the fact that the evidence is plain that they're hiding this. They're hiding this. They're contradicting what they said before. They're disposing of things that we've been told before in the name of maintaining this absurd narrative that they've tried to sell, that the Biden administration's tried to sell, that the deep states tried to sell, and they're all in on it to some extent. And I think we know why. People of power and prominence were involved in this thing. As clients, as associates, and we'll never get the answers. In fact, you know, I hope we do someday, but I don't think it will come through government disclosures. I'll just say that.
And you have to have your gut instinct to be able to override it, to be able to override this matrix that they have created. You have to have common sense. And common sense is not that common. We've learned that. We saw this during COVID. Get a couple of experts to say, hop on one foot and you'll be saved. Sure enough, people start hopping on one foot. We have to stop hopping on one foot and go, no. I don't care about your jargon. I don't care about your degree. What you just said was factually stupid. I want to be very clear here, guys. Everything that is happening right now is factually stupid. These people are idiots. They're a part of the club. We're not in it, but we better get wise to it pretty soon. That's all I'm going to say.
Totally agreed. Well done, Candace. Great coverage of this. She has covered this story better than almost anyone else out there, no matter what else you might think of Candace. She's been darn heroic on this, if you ask me. And I alluded to the fact that I don't believe answers will ever come out of the government in this case, or in this story in general, about Epstein and his dealings and whether he was part of an intelligence service and, you know, who he was trafficking minors to or who he associated with. I don't think we're going to get that through government. The only solution I think we have is to clamor about it, keep it in the news, point out the victims who will never get justice or have never gotten justice yet on this. Point that out, make noise about it. Don't let it go the way of the Kennedy assassination. And someday we might have a whistleblower from within the inside that, by great risk to him or herself, reveals the truth. Who was associated in this ring, in the government, in lobbies, in the business world. Whoever was involved, we might get revelations in the future. But it'll take a heroic soul like Julian Assange or Edward Snowden that, again, at great risk to themselves, reveals this and puts themselves in personal danger. And I hope we get those answers someday. I just don't think it's going to be through this administration. The tale is too absurd. We're all supposed to just swallow it hook, line, and sinker. And Candace was right there at the end. It's a big club, and we're not part of it. It's that George Carlin line, the famous one, right? Well, the Uniparty takes control once again, and they prove to be fraudulent once again. That is the lesson of this story, and it's why Americans shouldn't buy, the potential that there's going to be grand transparency by voting for one of two choices that were carefully selected by the political machine and carefully vetted such that they would never reveal this type of thing. Choosing from one of those two options is always going to bear the same fruit, the same vile fruit, the same corrupt fruit that we've been seeing. But I do want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below. Do you agree with Candace Owens on this? Do you think we'll ever get true answers in the Epstein case? Any other absurdities about the evidence they've given us, the video, or anything like that you want to point out? Let me know down below in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Candace Owens too. She's been amazing on this and covering this. And please consider becoming a YouTube member by clicking join down below. You would support the channel, which I'd greatly appreciate. And by doing that, you would also get access to all my videos on YouTube before they go public for the general public. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.